Hello. Welcome back. The wall's gone. So, unfortunately, I set everything in GameThru up perfectly, getting ready to record a perfect season, and I end up having to move. So, the wall is not going to be with us for a while now, so we're going to pretend it's here.
Hello, darkness, my old
Yeah, I'm definitely not going to do that. Anyways, we're going to just jump into this week's topic. I think a lot of you knew what this was if you guys watched the last episode. So, that is right, everybody. We're talking about The Last of Us 2, or The Last of Us Part 2, I should say. Now, this game is very interesting compared to the first one, and I have beat it. I've spent 25 hours of my godforsaken life playing this game. And yeah. So the critical reception was met with so much critical praise, it was almost kind of fishy, if that makes sense. 10 out of 10's here, 94 out of 100 Metacritic, 10 out of 10's here, 10 out of 10's here, 10 out of 10's here. Well, you can't see me right now because I'm actually under here looking at the computer, but let's look up The Last of Us Part 2. So the Metacritic score is 94 out of 100, but the user score, my god, when the game came out, the user score was 3.8. Oh my god. 3.8 out of 10, I believe. I don't know. I think so. 3.8. That's terrible. And it's actually better now. It's actually went up to 4.7, but still, that is absolutely horrendous. So why did this game do so bad towards the fans? Why did people hate it so much? Well, let's talk about that. So, I'm going to give you guys an honest live review of the game. I'm going to tell you how I feel when I'm playing it personally. Now, it's all scripted. I'm just gonna literally just read off the script here, what I've wrote, but it's all honest and it's all what I've actually felt when I'm playing the game. So for those of you who are worried, the first half of this episode is gonna be spoiler free for The Last of Us 2, but of course the second half of course, when that time comes, I'll leave a timer. I probably won't even leave a timer. I'll probably just warn you because the rest of the freaking episode is going to be tons of spoilers. So, I loaded up the game. We get a nice, cool, ambient boat. Slowly floating around in the water there. Pretty cool. Load up the game. We get to see Joel. We get to see Tommy. We get to see Ellie. It's pretty sick. I don't know why I wrote any of this down. It honestly has nothing to do with the video at all. But, so the connection to the world actually feels so much more vibrant and connective than the first game ever did. Although this game is made 7 years later, it's still incredible to watch, and it feels so great to play. It's honestly mind-blowing. I haven't felt vibes like this since I played Red Dead Redemption 2, which is honestly one of my favorite games of all time. Literally, as soon as we started riding the horse in the very first level, I immediately wanted to start spamming X like you would in Red Dead. But one thing that this game's beginning does perfect is the relationship dynamic between Joel and Ellie. It feels so much more rich and connected. Just the awkwardness that Joel gives out is just absolutely incredible. It's like he's, being a father, and it's so cool to watch them grow from pretty much hating each other to almost this father-daughter type dynamic. And in the second game, you just see it so much more fluently, and it's so cool. I mean, for God's sakes, Joel even whipped out the dad jokes for this one, guys.
What is the downside to eating a clock? It's time consuming.
So, I'm feeling the game. I'm digging it. I even got my Last of Us 2 Special Edition controller out, and I'm rocking out with this game right now. So, after the whole prologue, it skips to the future, and we actually get to see a whole new world. We get to see the connected elements between the newer, the older world and the newer world combined, and it's so cool watching those dynamics clash. So the newer world feels just so more full of life, obviously, because it is. It just is such a delight to walk around and, just not even explore, just take in everything that we're looking at, because it's so different from how the first game's bleak and depressing setting was. Now you even get to beat the fuck out of little kids with snowballs.
Oh, ow! Damn! Arm on that kid!
And that's just the surrounding nature in Jackson. Even when you're in Seattle, when you're in Santa Barbara, it all just feels so much richer than the first game. And like I said, the first game came out 7 years ago. Of course it's going to feel more rich, but it just makes me speechless. The amount of effort that you can see was put into this game's graphical design is absolutely incredible. Now, the graphics aren't even the biggest part. The sound design is absolutely incredible too. The atmosphere around and everything you hear just feels so natural and so smooth. All the subtle noises, like the blood that spurts out of the infected when you shoot them in the throat or something, and the air coming out of their lungs when you shoot them in the chest. It just makes the game feel so much more alive. The way Ellie would grab pills or scraps off tables and notes and stuff like that feels a lot more natural, unlike Joel breaking his arm just to reach some pills at the top shelf in the first game. And don't even get me started on the design of the infected, cause goddamn, they just look absolutely disgusting and horrendous, and you don't even want to be around them because they're so disgusting looking, and just the way they attack you just feels so much more creepy now. Even though it's the same AI pattern from the first game, it just feels so much more disgusting and horrendous, and it's something you actually want to avoid. And don't even get me started on those goddamned clickers. How many times did we say we didn't want clickers? Well, guess what? They're actually not that bad in this game. The clickers are actually manageable. But the stalkers? Oh, god damn, don't even get me started. I hated the clickers in the first game so much. They were just the worst enemy because they would always insta-kill you. Now you can actually fight back without having to get, insta-killed right away. But there's these super strong enemies called stalkers. At one point in the game, you're going through a building that's completely corroded by infected, but the stalkers are stuck to the building and they just jump out at you every half second. It's like you don't even get a chance to breathe, and you can't even be stealthy about it because they're in the wall and they jump out at you. Don't even get me started on the attention to detail, because it is absolutely insane. The exit wounds on the enemies are just so gruesomely grotesque and disgusting. They're just hard to look at sometimes. The way the bullet spread is paired perfectly to your bullet is absolutely insane. And sometimes the wounds are just so horrifically realistic. And sometimes those wounds are so brutally realistic that it's almost like hard to look at times. And don't even get me started on the references. The game takes place in 2037, but the world stopped progressing in 2013. So you'll see stuff like PS3s and games like Uncharted 2 and 3 and people playing the PS Vita that they found on the ground. It's absolutely insane. And just the other references to, like, the Jack X arcade racing machine is absolutely insane. And oh look, she's playing a PS Vita. I think you mean my PS Vita. One thing coming back to the game is weapon modification. Now with weapon modification, it's just the exact same thing from the first game, right? Instead, we get to actually watch Ellie build the gun from the ground up. And it's really cool, watching her actually put the mods together and stuff. It's honestly really refreshing. The melee combat feels so much more heavy and alive. It feels like you're actually putting super decent blows against the enemies. The slight open world aspect that gives you the enhanced time to travel around and explore some of the abandoned buildings in Seattle. Don't even get me started on the foliage in the game, because it is absolutely brilliant. It reacts with you and the plants around it so naturally. Even when you shoot a bullet through the plants will move with the bullet, and I think it's really impressive. Also, you get Ellie's notebook, very reminiscent to Nathan Drake's, where she writes down all of her thoughts, and you get to see all the stuff she draws down along your journey through The Last of Us Part 2. There's a bunch of new craftable items that you can add to your guns, like silencers that are made out of water bottles, and it's honestly super impressive how much was added to the game. But why did it fall flat? Now, if you guys aren't aware, this is the halfway point of the episode, at least for me recording it, and the rest of this is gonna be spoiler heavy. So if you guys don't want spoilers of The Last of Us 2, feel free to click off the video, go play the game, come back and watch it if you would. But if you don't mind spoilers, or you've already played the game, stay tuned, because we're going to talk about the problem with The Last of Us 2. So Joel is a major part of the first game. He's literally the main protagonist in the game. Now, if a lot of you guys followed the Last of Us trailers like I did, you guys saw a lot of Joel, and automatically you think that we're seeing a lot of Joel. We're going to probably see a lot of him in game. Actually, you're wrong. So Joel actually gets killed off within the first 15 minutes of the game by a girl named Abby, who actually is the daughter of the doctor who was doing surgery on Ellie that Joel ended up stabbing in the neck in the first game. Now, a lot of people were upset by this. I mean, I was upset by it. In fact, this was actually leaked before the game came out. Now, Joel was gonna die no matter what. And let's be honest. And let's also state that Joel was never a good guy. He literally, the cure for mankind could have been developed, and Joel pretty much stopped that from happening. Joel is not the good guy. But that doesn't make him one of the most complex characters of any game in history, and that's why we love him so much, because he's so different. He's not the hero. He's the hero, but he's not the hero that we thought he would be. Now, The Last of Us 2 kills him off very quick. Almost within the first 30, maybe 40, maybe to the first hour of the game, right? Now, my opinion on Joel's death changed so much during this playthrough. I was upset, and then I was understanding, and then I was upset, and then I was understanding, and then it was just back, forth. Joel had it coming. I mean, a lot of us figured Joel would die. So why did his death piss off so many fans if it's something we kind of knew would happen? And that's the marketing of the game's fault. Now, the game is marketed where Joel was going to have a huge role in the game. Every trailer had Joel, doing some sort of action or whatever, and it was, it felt classic. It felt like we were going to be with Joel and Ellie. We're going to go on some sort of adventure. We were going to explore this cult of survivors, and we were going to infiltrate them or whatever. Based off a lot of the leaks in the trailers that we saw. And eventually, Joel might confess about killing all the fireflies, and Ellie's gonna, resolve the issue within the game. But no, Joel kind of just dies instantly, and the misconception pissed off a lot of people. A lot of people were mad because they feel like they were looking for The Last of Us, and they got half of it with only Ellie in the game. Now, when the game when his death got leaked, a lot of people were upset. I was upset too. I read it because I didn't really care, to be honest. I mean, I would care, but I just read it. Him dying so early is what leads to the main problem of the game, and that would be the story. Now, the story for The Last of Us 2 is amazing, but it falls just short of being good, if that makes sense. Now, you might be like confused. Why are you saying it's amazing, but then it's not good? Now, The Last of Us 2 has a identity problem. It feels like a part 3 to a trilogy that we never saw the part 2 of. We just went from part 1 all the way over to part 3, and part 3 happens to have 2 over the name. Now, if The Last of Us Part 2 was a Part 3 instead, the game would be so much more amazing. Now, think of this imaginary world where The Last of Us 2 is Part 3 and we actually had a game before this. It would delve into stuff like Joel confronting his past and talking to Ellie about killing all the fireflies. And we would see problems like Joel's issue with the fireflies and Ellie get resolved, and we would have resolution between Ellie and Joel, even if it was a brief interaction like it was in the Last of Us Part 2, the one that we have now. So we would get to see that problem between Ellie and Joel become resolved. Now, we got Part 2. Now, Part 2 does have a good story, for the most part. We start the game off playing as Joel. Joel tells Tommy about the fireflies, and then we play as Ellie in the future, and Joel gets killed by the character named Abby, who is the second protagonist of the game. Now, Abby kills Joel. Ellie's pissed, now we're on this revenge quest. Now, what the game did was create a problem before a problem was solved. Now, the problem that was created was Ellie getting revenge against Abby for killing Joel. Now, the problem that wasn't solved was Joel and Ellie's resolution to Joel admitting to killing all the fireflies. Now, obviously he didn't kill all the fireflies because fireflies are the ones that killed him, right? Also known as wolves now. Because they joined a different affiliated group. Now, the game has us playing as Ellie, and honestly, for the entire first half, I'm on the edge of my seat, right? I'm sorry, I love all the characters on Ellie's side. James is amazing, Dina is so interesting, Tommy is Tommy, you can't not love Tommy, and the game is just awesome, it feels good to play, and I lust for that revenge, because Joel was such an awesome character. And then along the way, we kill a lot of the people that were part of that group that killed Joel. And then eventually, Abby meets us and has Tommy at gunpoint, and the climax of the game happens. And then the game does what a lot of people hate the most about this game. It forces us to play as Abby for the entire second half of the game. So, I have absolutely no problem playing as Abby in The Last of Us. I mean, it's something that I kind of figured would have happened, but I didn't expect it to last 12 hours long. Now, 12 hours long is just completely excessive. It's something that didn't need to be done. Now, with The Last of Us 2, you would assume playing as Abby, the story would coincide with the story that we're seeing with Ellie, Ellie hunting down Abby. But unfortunately, it's something we just don't see at all. Now, a lot of complaints coming from the story is because it doesn't follow Ellie completely. It does follow Abby for half of the game, and its reason is to sympathize with her so that we have a better understanding of why she hunted down Joel for revenge. Now, the only issue is we don't get to see her side of the story coinciding with Ellie. the only time we ever get to see that is when Tommy fights with Abby, and I believe Yara, I believe. I don't really remember her name. She wasn't in the game that long, but yeah, I believe it was Yara. So anyways, Tommy fights the two, and they push him into the water, and that's all we pretty much get to see when it comes to The Last of Us 2, and the two coinciding stories. Now, with two coinciding stories, you would expect it to kind of be like this, but actually it kind of is like this, and then while Ellie's continues and stops right here, Abby's kind of does this, and then they meet up. The problem with Abby's story is it takes an entirely different side story that a lot of us, or me personally, and a few of my colleagues believe feels more like a side story or a DLC story. Now, Abby's story, don't get me wrong, it's incredible, and I love every aspect of it. And in fact, besides the moment when Joel and Ellie are walking through the side of the house, Abby's part is the most intense part of the game. A lot of the fights between the scars and the wolves is so intense and so full of life that it's hard to pass up, like the part with the burning village or walking across the bridge from building to building. It all is a lot more intense than Ellie's side, which is just her hunting down Abby for revenge and getting a lot of her relationship between her and Dina. But unfortunately, it falls flat for feeling like it mattered. Lev and Yara, I feel like they didn't need to be in this story. Even though they were essential for Abby's part, I felt like we didn't need to see it. Now, personally, after playing through that part, that's how I felt. And then once we got to the actual ending, my opinion differed a lot. Lev is a very important character to Abby. Lev is her, I guess, adoptive brother that she picks up along the way. And, Ellie kind of threatens her in the final fight between the two and says, "You brought this on this kid." But instead of finding two new characters like Yara and Lev to completely build, they didn't even focus on Abby's group to begin with. All of her group died. The one dude named Danny, he didn't even have a speaking line. James, he dies very quick. Manny, probably the best character, just is done. He just gets shot and that's it. Owen and Mel, the most complicated characters and the most interesting out of the entire story, die way too quickly. Now, do I mind them dying? No. At first I didn't really know the characters, so I didn't really care because, we kill them as Ellie. But then, we get to interact with them in the story while we're playing as Abby as she goes to look for Owen. And, watching those characters interact was really refreshing. Those two characters were so complicated. Those two characters were just so complicated. And it was a lot of fun. It was really fun to watch, sort of like how Joel was in the first part. But towards the end of the story, I didn't care about them, and they didn't matter at all. Now, what's the problem with The Last of Us? The problem with The Last of Us Part 2 is that it suffers from having a story identity problem. It jumps from so many stories over and over again without conclusion that it just feels like a jumbled mix. And that's why a lot of people are saying, where is the story? There's no story in this. It's just a revenge story. Because that's what it feels like. There is a story. You really have to open your mind when playing this game, because there really is a story. It's the conflict between Ellie and living a normal life. She can't get over Joel's death. It's also her getting over the fact that she could have been something and Joel took that away from her. It's about Abby's lust for revenge and her possibly getting everybody she loved killed along the way, and her consequences and the consequences that follow that. It's also about Abby trying to restart with Lev and Yara, and she's trying to atone for her actions. And that's probably why the ending seems so bleak and so just kind of ends, because it's really hard to understand what's going on in the story because it's just all over the place. One thing I would have to say about the story is it feels way too close like a part 3. I felt like instead of having a few flashback cutscenes with Joel and Ellie, we should have seen their story be resolved in an entirely new game, because I feel like, the main ending of the first game shouldn't just be solved by just a few flashback sequences. I feel like that problem was not touched on in the game at all, because the only problem that was getting in the way of that was her lust for revenge. Now, does this make the game bad? No. The game is absolutely incredible. If you open your mind to it, you'll find a truly beautiful story. And to be honest, after a week of playing and writing the script, it's kind of like tired me down because the story is so, dark and depressing. A lot of people online are saying, crap about The Last of Us Part 2. The Last of Us Part 2 is a hard game to like, I'll tell you that. The first half is incredible, playing as Ellie. Abby's part, which is half of the game, mind you, is hard to get used to, and it's hard to understand, but you really have to understand Abby's perspective, which is another problem. You're trying to force people to understand something when, on this planet, humans are the least understanding people out of pretty much everyone. Now, once you understand Abby's story and why Joel had to die, it feels a lot more refreshing to think back on the game and think maybe the game wasn't so bad after all, because there actually was a story. Now, is The Last of Us 2 a good game? It is absolutely an incredible game. Is it flawed? It's a lot more flawed than we wanted it to be. Now, I would say in some sort of perfect world where we could have restarted and had whatever Last of Us we want, I would have the second game be probably about resolving that issue between Joel and Ellie from the end of the first game, and then having Joel died from Abby at the end of the first game. And that would make the third game feel so much more better, is having Joel's death and us really wanting to get revenge towards the end of that game. But unfortunately, that's not reality. And with a lot of the games nowadays, reality isn't on our side. But does that make The Last of Us 2 a bad game? Absolutely not. The Last of Us 2 is an incredible game. If you loved the first one, you should definitely go pick it up. Just when you play it, make sure you have an open mind about it, just so you can truly enjoy the game. That's it for GameThru. My pizza is here, and I think I'm hungry because I've been playing The Last of Us 2 for a week straight. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys in the next GameThru. Have a good one.
If I ever were to lose you, I'd surely lose myself. Everything I have found here, I'm not found by myself. Try and sometimes you'll succeed to make this man of me. All my stolen missing parts, I've no need for any more. 'Cause I believe, and I believe 'cause I can see our future days, days of you and me.